Welcome to Development Hell. For every horror movie to hit VOD, there are countless others that end up DOA. Development Hell is a podcast dedicated to unearthing these cursed horror productions. We're going to find out what went wrong and decide if these titles still stand a shot at the green light. I am your host, Josh Korengut. I'm a filmmaker located in Toronto, Canada. Development Hell is a proud member of the Dread Podcast Network. Today's episode is going to be focused on the unrealized 2015 HELLRAISER reboot at Dimension Films. We are lucky enough to score an interview with Hollywood screenwriter Teddy Tenenbaum. Teddy was hired by Dimension officially to be the writer for the HELLRAISER reboot that never actually came to be. We talked to Teddy about some of his crazier Hollywood experiences, why the film didn't get made, what it was like being pitted against Clive Barker himself, and the bonkers plot behind his very cool-sounding HELLRAISER reboot that was going to take things in a very different direction. Hold on to your lament configuration, because we're about to dig deep into the HELLRAISER reboot with Teddy Tenenbaum. Also, I just want to say thank you so much for coming on my podcast. I'm so excited to have you here.
Sure. I never get to talk about HELLRAISER, so.
Oh, wow. Really? What, your family doesn't allow you to talk about HELLRAISER?
I don't think anybody in my family and my close group of writer friends cares enough about HELLRAISER, frankly.
Wow, that's tragic. Yeah, you know what? Actually, I would say the same.
Yeah, and that's actually kind of the truth of being a screenwriter is that, you know, if your movie, you're doing a lot of development, and if for the projects that don't get made, no one ever sees them, no one ever hears about them. They kind of languish in, you know, on your hard drive.
Could you introduce yourself to our audience today?
Yes, my name is Teddy Tenenbaum, and I'm a screenwriter and now director living in Los Angeles.
How did you get into screenwriting and film to begin with?
I knew that I wanted to pursue it in college. I did not get into my film school of choice, which was UCLA. So instead, while I was studying anthropology there, I just kind of knocked on doors around Hollywood, got a couple of jobs as a writer's assistant. So I worked on a number of sitcoms and some dramas as a writer's assistant while writing scripts that I hoped would get me an agent someday. And eventually it did, turned into a lot of meetings that went nowhere, and a couple that turned into jobs. And for a long time, most of my career was based not on selling original concepts, but by adapting ideas and intellectual property that was already owned by various studios. So that's what I've been doing most of the time. But along the way, I have also sold a few spec scripts and original ideas. In Hollywood, you know, only about 10% of what gets bought actually gets made. So you write a lot and see only a little made, unless you reach the kind of stratosphere of writers, in which case you're doing a lot of work on projects that are already have a lot of money in them. So it's very hard for a studio to not proceed with them. So a lot of the A-list writers, and they're also great, so they write great scripts. And those guys tend to have a much better ratio, probably 50 to 60%.
Can you tell us about any of like the early sitcom projects? Is there anything we might know the names of?
I worked on Ellen DeGeneres' sitcom.
Oh, Get Out.
So that was, and it was fun because it was before she came out publicly, and that was always the plan, strategizing that for a season or two before it was actually written.
That's historic. I'm a queer guy myself, and that's a huge moment in queer history. Not a happy moment, unfortunately, but
it was hard for her. Yeah, I mean, I guess we were insulated because in Hollywood, you know, it's always been much better except for actors, where it's always been terrible in terms of the work that they can get. We were so excited. It was a momentous occasion. I think we were very optimistic, and I can't speak for Ellen. I think she was too. That was the sense that I got, and I think it was very frustrating and disappointing when there was so much backlash, but at the same time, people knew right then how momentous it was and how historic it was. And the writers of that episode won an Emmy for that.
Really?
So I think that it was a mix. It was bittersweet. But it's great to see at least how far Hollywood has come since then. And actually, I think how far America has come. And I have to give a ton of credit to Ellen DeGeneres.
Yeah, I was going to say, and as far as Ellen has come as well.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. It's funny because she always wanted to do a talk show. She
really?
used to talk about that back then. She wanted to be part of the, I know this is off topic, but
That's fine.
I think one of her idols was on the other side, was on the comedy side, was Lucille Ball. And I think the writers tried to work a lot of that kind of physical humor into the show, and she was brilliant. She always wanted to do a talk show. And so it was really.
I've been stalking you a little bit online, and I kind of know the answer to this, but I was wondering if you could talk about what you're working on now, and if we could get into Koreatown Ghost Story a little bit.
After years and years of writing things and then looking for directors, whether it was a project that a studio owned, and after I wrote my draft, they would go try to find a director who they liked for the project, or writing projects on my own and looking for directors to attach themselves. I think my writing partner and I, who I'll talk about in a second, we just got incredibly frustrated with that process. And the truth is that I always wanted to, and it's the oldest cliche in Hollywood, but I always wanted to direct. That's actually the reason I started writing, so that I could write and hopefully someday direct. And I just got lazy, frankly. I just enjoyed being at home and writing rather than, I wrote on a television show for a while, and I was on set for a lot of the episodes, not just mine. I was kind of the unofficial set writer for the show. And the hours are long and arduous, and everybody in the crew works incredibly hard. And I kind of liked being a writer and, setting my own hours. So I kind of put that aside for a long time. And then my wife and my wife is a writer too, and has been for as long as we've been together, but we've written separately. So we finally, a few years ago, decided we had made some attempts to write together in the past. And we had luck a few years ago where we wrote an idea of hers together that we sold to Sony. And we decided that we wanted to kind of take control of our own destiny. So we started practicing filming shorts. We made a couple of small ones, and then we had this idea we really wanted to make into a feature film. So we wrote the script and attracted Margaret Cho, the legend, and one of my heroes and one of my wife's heroes, to executive produce it and star in it. And so we are just now entering festivals with it, and it's a horror film. We're in 9 festivals. The first 9 that we've heard from got accepted. So a couple of these festivals are, festivals that I've loved forever. The Grimfest in England is this
amazing festival. Yeah.
Yeah. Very excited about that. Panic Fest.
Panic Fest is, I can't wait to talk about it, because a film of mine went to Panic Fest last year.
Oh, that's awesome.
And it's just they're just so cool and great to their filmmakers, and they show such exciting stuff.
Yeah. We're so amazed and honored to be surrounded by all these amazing filmmakers and films. It makes us feel really good about ours. Unfortunately, we can't go this year. But,
I know.
And I guess you couldn't go last year because they probably didn't have it in person.
It's funny. It was at the end of our run,
right?
And we didn't go because we'd just been to so many, and we really should have, because it was right before the world ended.
That's what I remember hearing, that they were like the last festival.
They were. Yeah, I really regret not going, actually.
Make another short, go next year.
Absolutely. Well, yeah, so easy. Just get a short out there.
Yeah, so easy to make a short that's going to be accepted into one of the best horror festivals.
Yeah. I'm not a Gen Z. I can't just take out my iPhone and make a short. It's not that easy for me. Right. But it's an amazing festival. Did you say you got into all 9 that you've heard from so far?
Yeah, so far we're really excited.
God. That's obnoxious, actually.
Our last short didn't do anything like that. So I'm
Okay.
kind of
Okay.
reveling in that now. Our last short was, like 25% or something like that.
Mm. Well, I hope that you continue to get into the rest of them. I'm sure you have a bunch of like prestige ones that you still haven't heard from yet.
Yeah, we haven't heard. The only two that we got into in time, or that we were able to submit in time to before their deadlines that are that well known in terms of Horror Fest, were the two that I mentioned.
Mm-hmm.
I guess there are some coming up, but we've also just started getting into. We just got into CAM Fest, CAAM Fest, which is I think it's the biggest Asian American festival in the country, and our subject matter is a Korean American story. The actors are Asian American. The co-director, co-writer is Korean American. Half of our crew is Asian American. So we're
cool.
really excited about that.
All I know is the title, and I'm already spooked. So, am I allowed to know anything about like the plot?
Sure. So it's based on this ritual that is sometimes practiced in Asian families, Korean American families. Sometimes we know that it's practiced in some Chinese American families as well. And it actually comes from a true story that my wife had a cousin who's older than her. And when my wife was young, this cousin she was only in her 20s at the time, but she lived in Seoul. And she fell to her death when a banister in her apartment building just gave way.
Whoa!
And she was 1 week or 2 weeks from being married. And so there's this idea that a young person who dies before they're married may be an unfulfilled ghost, an unhappy ghost. And my wife's aunt felt that she was being haunted by her daughter. And so she had a priest I think it was a Buddhist priest, but I'm not sure, so don't quote me on that, do a ritual marrying her ghost to another young man who had died unmarried.
Cool.
But in our short, our unfortunate victim is a living person and asked to marry a ghost, which is never a good idea.
I like it. That's a very active twist.
It's fun. It's a fun.
Yeah.
How much in a short, but.
And this is a time where I feel like mainstream horror is accepting people from comedy with open arms, because I think we're finally seeing the dynamic between comedy and horror it's a good relationship. So I think having Margaret in there is going to help you guys a lot.
Yeah, I agree with you 100%. I think that there's actually a close connection.
My one question before we head into Hellraiser territory is, do you consider yourself to be a horror or a genre writer, or do you like to sort of steer clear of labels?
No, I love it. I mean, I've done a lot, and with my wife, we've done different genres. The two of us together have done, I would say, thriller and action. But when we get together, our favorite genre is horror.
Oh, really? But she hates Hellraiser. How dare she?
No, she does not hate it. No, definitely not. She's just not as excited about it.
Okay, well, fair. No, that's not fair.
And she doesn't have as deep of a knowledge of it. And even mine is actually, like, compared to most horror fans, I have a very shallow knowledge.
There's a lot of Hellraiser out there.
There is a ton. And in fact, I was asked not to read a lot of it. Beyond what going in, I had knowledge of it, obviously.
So you didn't watch Hellworld?
I have not watched Hellworld.
Oh, you got to get to Hellworld one of these days.
Yeah, I actually need to go and do a lot of back reading and watching of the Hellraiser saga.
I mean, if you still, like, I don't know what your relationship is with the franchise at this point, but sometimes if something doesn't end the way I want it to, sometimes I'm not able to revisit certain properties.
Right. Yeah. No, I feel that. But to answer your question, I'm really, horror has taken an interesting turn since I started in it, when it was still kind of a genre that had its best in the 70s, and the 90s changed all that. And I think that horror is now in its heyday. So, but even before then, I was really excited and proud to be a horror writer. I don't think there's anything that you shouldn't be proud of to be being associated with the genre. So we do a lot of stuff, but I know this sounds weird. I guess everybody has, within whatever they do, everybody has their niches and their talents. I find comedy. We love comedy. We always put comedy in our horror. I find comedy extraordinarily difficult. And I find drama very difficult, just straight drama. I find horror as a writer, for me, the easiest genre to write because I love to scare myself. So that's always my goal. So, I love to write at night and be freaked out by what I'm writing. And if I am, I think I'm happy with the work I've done.
I love that. Yeah, if I'm ever at a loss for what to write, I just like to think, like, what scares me? What am I scared of? What could I be scared of right now? And that always helps.
Yeah, absolutely. Look, it has tropes. I mean, just like every genre, the horror genre has well-worn tropes. Some of them, you always want to try to take a trope and spin it on its head. But at the same time, audiences expect certain things, and you have to deliver on those things. And look, I mean, as much as we might hate a jump scare, it works almost every time. So you have to have some.
Oh, and it's an art too.
Like, totally.
It's so difficult to make an effective jump scare work.
Yeah, I think especially as a director, like that's what we found making this short film is that suspense was a lot easier than a jump scare. And suspense, I mean, for me, suspense is much more important. It works better, but suspense is easier to create on film, I think, than a jump scare is. You think the opposite, but that's what we found.
And if you use them effectively, there's nothing wrong with them. I think it's like the 10-year anniversary for Insidious. And that movie has one of the most iconic jump scares, I think, of all time. There's a scene where Patrick Wilson is talking, and all of a sudden, Darth Maul is behind his head. Yeah.
Oh, it's great. I mean, I think James Wan may have invented that shot. It's a fantastic shot.
James Wan, he truly my hero, my modern hero, and I just brilliant. As it is. Have you seen Dead Silence?
No, I haven't seen it. Okay, is that an early movie?
It's his second film, I think, after Saw. After the success of Saw, I guess he was just sort of given carte blanche, and he made this extremely wacky, like urban legend horror movie that didn't do well, and so he sort of disappeared for a while after that. But I am a huge fan of it, and I really recommend it.
I have to go see that. I have not seen that.
Yeah, it's very like urban legend horror, kind of like Stephen King. Cool. Coastal stuff. Anyways, a big fan.
I think the only other James Wan movie I have not seen because we have a personal connection to it and it's painful is The Conjuring. So I can't see that. Not for
why? Can I know? Can we just have a brief?
Sure.
Just a snippet of why?
I don't know. 15 years ago or so, my wife was in a used bookstore and she found a book called The Demonologists, and it was an out of print paperback about Ed and Lorraine Warren. And she, devoured it, gave it to me. I thought it had to be a movie. I looked into the rights. The only person who had ever owned their rights was Ridley Scott, and the rights had lapsed. And so I called them, and I worked out an arrangement after, gaining their trust to try to sell it to Hollywood. And we ended up selling it as a pitch to Joel Silver and Warner Brothers. And then it had a long and storied journey. At that point, I got to spend a week with Ed and Lorraine at their house. I went to an exorcism. I spent some very frightening time in their basement alone. I still think Ed left me there alone on purpose to screw with me. And after that, we didn't get it made that point because our executive at Warner Brothers left to become an independent producer. Okay. Not independent. He had a deal at Warner Brothers, but he couldn't take the project with him. And our executive at Joel Silver's company also left. And so eventually we had this idea to turn it into a television show. And that's when I met Clive Barker, because we thought, who better to produce this than one of the greatest living legends
of horror. Yeah.
And we approached him, and he was very excited about it. So we worked out a pitch with him. We went and sold it to NBC. And then he got orphaned at NBC by their corporate changeover when they got bought by Universal. Ugh. And then we were on the brink of getting it made again with Joel Silver and Dark Castle when
iconic
New Line came in and got the rights to their story, and that became The Conjuring, and it was just so painful.
I'm sorry. And with Dark Castle too, I was obsessed with Dark Castle in their heyday. Yeah,
it would have been great, but I'm sure it was great as it is because it's James Wan, and And I'm very happy for Ed and Lorraine before they passed away. Well, he had passed away, but that Lorraine got to finally benefit from, seeing her stories on the big screen.
I guess so, but I'm on your side. I'm sorry. That stings, but it's okay. Everything works out as it should. No, it doesn't. I don't know. But it's no Insidious. I can say that as an outsider.
Oh yeah. So
between the two, hands down. Although personally, I'm not a big religious horror person, so I'm a Jew. I'm like a very casual Jew, so that kind of stuff is a little bit foreign to me.
I am too, but for some reason, I love the religious horror.
I think I've been very polite without jumping straight into the Hellraiser stuff. Sure. So I feel like I'm allowed now, right?
I think you've had enough foreplay.
Okay, good. Okay, so Development Hell is about my obsession with canceled horror projects. And speaking of which, I do understand you were once attached to a Hellraiser reboot ?
Yes, and I never knew whether or not to call it a reboot. I personally looked at it as another story in the Hellraiser canon. I don't, I think that at the time the studio considered it a reboot. It was definitely not a remake. 100% not a remake.
Yeah, it was a little too far down the line to call it that.
Very, very different. So the rights were owned at the time and may still be owned by Dimension. And they, I believe, were behind a lot of the sequels. And then about five or 6 years ago, I think, for the last probably 12, 15, 13 years or so, they've been trying to mount a reboot. And there have been a lot of other writers on the project. I don't even know all the writers who've been on the project. And they got to a point where, according to their conversation with my agent and my manager, actually, I think it was my manager who was the main contact there, that they just needed a fresh start. They weren't sure what direction to go, and they had heard a lot of pitches, they had a lot of scripts, and they were just kind of throwing it out there to any horror writer who they liked, who might have a new take on it. And so they specifically did not. They said it does not have to be based on the original film. We've tried that a few times, and so far we haven't liked what we've gotten enough. And so they just kind of said, take what you want from the mythology and go from there. And so I kind of read into that they expressly wanted to avoid a remake. That doesn't mean they never said that, but you kind of have to read between the lines sometimes, and that's kind of what I got out of it.
To sort of try to go down the recalibration route. That's what they called the last Halloween, a recalibration.
Right. Well, it was before they decided to reboot movies 5 years after the original movie.
Oh, I know. It's very confusing. I'm grateful as a horror fan, but I would love a subtitle on these just for fun.
Unlike the new Scream movie, which is called Scream, I think.
I knew it. I knew it was going to be after Halloween. I knew Black Christmas. There's 3 movies called Black Christmas.
Right. Yeah. Right. And I've been involved with a lot of remake/reboots, of horror movies, and so this is a very personal thing, and everyone's going to feel differently about it. But as a writer, you're walking into dangerous territory when you are in. It's more dangerous for the director, for sure. But you're walking into dangerous territory when you are remaking something that is a cult classic, beloved by so many people. And I've had to think twice about certain projects. So and I had a very specific feeling about the Hellraiser project that is probably going to make me hated by a lot of people, Hellraiser fans, and also probably make a lot of people who hear this be very thankful that my movie never got made. But I think the best way to explain it is, if you don't mind indulging me, to start with a little backstory. So it was probably about this story goes back to probably 2010. Around 2010, I think I was approached to come up with a take on a project that is probably, in my mind, one of the greatest pieces of literature of all time, which is the Sandman series.
Gaiman?
Yeah.
Oh, I'm a fan.
Yes. I mean, it's had a huge influence on me. I think it's stunning from start to finish. And so when I heard, they'd had this project's been at Warner Brothers forever as a feature film, way before it's now back in Neil Gaiman's hands as a television show series, thank goodness. But back at the time, they'd been looking for a take. It had been written by an Academy Award winning, they had a draft by an Academy Award winning writer that people loved around town. I'm not going to name any names, but I didn't love it. It wasn't The Sandman to me. It was written beautifully, but for me, it didn't capture The Sandman. I went in and talked to them, and kind of the first thing they said was, we want this to be a superhero movie. And I immediately started shrinking in my chair because I just, Sandman's not a superhero, at least not in any kind of traditional sense. But the meeting really went downhill when they started talking about how Sandman had to be very human and had to be very relatable and had to be very heroic right from the start of the story. And to me, that misses the entire point of Sandman. He's not human. He's not relatable for most of the series, and he's cold, and he has trouble relating to humans, and he has, some of it comes from pain in his past, but he's incredibly cold to his great love of his life. And it takes a whole series for him to get to the point where maybe there's a spark of understanding of, of the heart of humanity's heart. And all of that is to say, I walked away from that meeting and called my agent and said, I have no interest in this. I cannot be involved in this because I would destroy Sandman. So, thank goodness that it's back in his hands because he'll do wonders with it. But,
yes.
But the point of that story is that that's not the way I felt about Hellraiser.
Okay, good.
So Hellraiser, first of all, I love the story that it comes from. I'm a huge Clive Barker fan. Like Clive Barker, Peter Straub, and Stephen King are heroes of mine, and all for very different reasons. And Clive Barker, his works are tremendous, and I think even when he steps a little bit aside from horror, I think The Great and Secret Show is my favorite Clive Barker novel. And so I was, I'm such a worshiper of his that I thought it could be really dangerous. But I don't necessarily feel that way about his original Hellraiser movie. There's stuff in it that I love, and it's horrifying and it's disturbing. But for me, it never worked 100% as a film. And part of it is because, I'm a little basic. When it comes to my horror movies, I don't need to have someone to identify with. I don't need to have someone who's likable, but I want to understand a character. Like three of the leads of the movie, I just like they're so unpleasant. And the daughter is mildly interesting to me, but I never really cared that much about her. To me, the hero of the movie was Pinhead.
Yeah, and it was there for 5 minutes.
Yeah, exactly. And that's who I wanted to know more about. And the Cenobites. I wanted to know more about the Cenobites.
Yeah, and you're not alone. I think that's where the fans wanted to dig into as well.
Truly, the great horror movies, so many of the great horror movies are all about the villain, the antagonist, right? That's who we care about or remember the most. So I didn't feel like, yes, I felt like it could be worrisome and difficult to remake something that was so beloved. But at the same time, there's so many pieces of that saga that you could just fit in anywhere and just be another part of the Hellraiser canon. And I wouldn't say I was trying to remake it. I was just trying to tell a new story within the world, So I was okay totally starting fresh. And that also meant considering changing or rewriting the story of who Pinhead is. And we did that. So again, I knew it could get me in like big trouble and people would probably hate me for it. But it was kind of fun to reimagine that. And at the time, I didn't actually know that part of the canon also had a backstory for Pinhead, that he was a human at one point, which is what we did as well. Our version was a lot more famous than the human he is in that iteration. But we came at it. We also reinvented I know there's the box. I know there's like, I'm trying to remember the two configuration names.
Yeah, okay. It's long, and don't worry about it. I saw it today. I don't remember.
Yeah, I know there are two of them.
Lament configuration?
Yeah, the lament configuration, but then there's also the name of there's one that's named after a person, and I can't remember.
Oh, okay.
I apologize to all of the Hellraiser fans.
They are yelling at us right now.
Yeah.
I know.
So we came up with a whole backstory for that and a whole a new mythology for that as well. But frankly, the story of, how it happened is probably more entertaining than the script or the story itself. Okay.
Yeah, I want to know.
It's not so much the how, but like some of the circumstances surrounding it. The founder of Dimension is Bob Weinstein, brother of Harvey Weinstein. I think that Harvey might be one of the founders of Dimension too, but I'm not sure how separate Miramax and Dimension were. Dimension was, is the genre arm of the studio, and this was obviously way before it came out what Harvey Weinstein has been involved in for all these years. I've never been, there are all these stories that people in Hollywood knew this stuff, but I've never been really like a player in Hollywood. So I don't hear any gossip or anything. I had never really knew much about Bob either, except that he was notoriously brutally honest. And just be prepared. Everyone just told me to be prepared. So it was really interesting because and the executives on the film, the Dimension executives, are brilliant guys. They were right from the start. They're brilliant story people. I really loved working with them every step of the way. And then Bob would come in, and the first time I met him, he heard the pitch, and I had no idea what he would think. And he said, this is brilliant. It's like a love story. It's so beautiful. It's not what I expected out of Hellraiser, which was great. And he said, now we got to try to find a director who wants to make it. And this was before we had made a deal for me to write it. So, I knew that potentially meant more work for me. And if we didn't find a director, who knows if they'd actually make the deal. And I just didn't, I just didn't know what was going to happen. So, so they started making these meetings to pitch the idea to get a director on board who would then develop the movie with me as the writer. So the first person we went to was Andy Muschietti, and Barbara, his sister, as well as the producer. And this was before It came out.
Yeah.
It was after Mama, which I...
Oh, okay. So Mama had happened.
Mama had come out, which I thought it was a totally horrifying film. And so it was, I loved the idea of potentially being able to work with them. And they were overseas at the time. So we pitched it to them on Skype, and they passed. I didn't have much to say about it, so I don't know if they liked anything about it. But it was fun meeting them. And then after that, Bob set up the next meeting with a director he had worked with early on in this director's career. And I don't think it went that well from what I had heard the first time they worked together. And so I was wondering why they were going to do it again, but it was because they loved this director. And when they revealed that the director was Guillermo Del Toro, I was also very excited to go pitch it because amongst my film heroes, he's at he's in the very tiny, small top group at the very, very top.
Of course, same.
Yeah, I'm just the idea of meeting him. I didn't care what he thought of the movie. I just wanted to meet him. Yeah, so we went to pitch to him, and this could be for him to direct or produce because obviously he produces movies that are as good as the movies he directs. I still think Orphanage is a decade. Just
terrifying movie.
And beautiful. Beautiful.
It's always beautiful. They're always so beautiful. Devil's Backbone was just chef's kiss.
Yeah, and the emotionally, it's so engaging that I think I cried like the end of the first 3 times I watched Orphanage. It's just such a beautiful story.
It's scary. It's really scary.
Oh, it's great. It's beautiful. It's so well directed. Bayona is amazing too. So, so we went to meet him, and it was like a fanboy's dream because we went to his office at Warner Brothers. He's behind him during the pitch was his editing bay where he was working on Pacific Rim, which was totally exciting. Because I knew I knew what it was about, but and I was thrilled. I was so excited to see it. And I could see some of the kaiju on the screen behind him.
Oh my God.
Cool. And so we pitched it to him, and he gave awesome notes.
Okay.
He talked about how much he loved so much of it, and then he had some problems with parts of it. But at the end, he didn't say if he was going to get involved or not. But he gave really great notes. And at the end of the meeting, the executives who he knew, and Bob Weinstein he'd worked with closely before, they kind of waved goodbye or shook his hand, and he pulled me into this bear hug, which was a total shock to me. And then he kind of whispered, "Good luck."
Oh no.
And
He
I
knew.
didn't know if he meant good luck because finding a director, or good luck with writing the script, or good luck working in this situation. I had no idea. It was kind of chilling, and reassuring at the same time. But it will always be one of my favorite Hollywood moments, is being hugged by Guillermo Del Toro and told good luck. So
that is extremely iconic.
And obviously, I hope to have that opportunity again sometime in the future.
I hope that you do too. I've been dying to do an episode about him for a while. He started a label at Disney called Disney Double Dare You, where he was going to do a series of like really spooky kid movies. Yeah. And the whole label just fell apart because I guess he had other things going on. But I'm really desperate to get that episode up one day.
Oh, that's a great idea.
And his Haunted Mansion remake would have been just something else.
Yeah. I mean, as soon as we found out, so the tale took a turn, because as soon as we found out he was passing, he did not want to get involved with it. Then Bob turned on me. I'm not saying he was. It was just because of that or anything, but he wasn't as enamored of me at that point. From his brutal honesty, his drawer of brutal honesty, he told me as soon as he found out, I read that demonologist script of yours last night. I didn't think so much of it. So things started to get worrisome, and this was before we had made a deal. And then, so like the talk about it and whether or not there was going to be a deal and whether or not I was going to write the script went on for months, must have been months. And at the very end of it, we got a call saying that they wanted to go ahead with it, and they were closing a deal, and we were going to be set to go. And so, a friend of mine, another writer named Ryan Rowe, has said in the past that the best day of a project is the day you get the job, and it's downhill from there. And mine went downhill really fast, because a week after I got the job and started working on the script, I read in Deadline that I was going to be competing against another writer, which is something that they hadn't told me. And when I read my name wasn't mentioned, but this writer's name was, and I was a little bit horrified to find out that it was Clive Barker.
No. That's not correct.
So apparently Clive had been very interested in remounting a true remake. I don't know how close to the original, but a remake. And he had been talking to them at the same time they were talking to me, which is probably one of the reasons that this was going on. But I don't know if he knew, but I assume he knew about me. We had already worked together on the Demonologist TV show. I loved working with him. He's an amazing, obviously brilliant, but also warm and wonderful person.
Another queer icon, just to get
absolutely.
That out there.
And if I ever had to, and another one of the great moments in my career was getting to go to his house, and he gave me a tour of his art. He had a show upcoming, and I got to see all of his beautiful art up close while he was still working on some of it, and it was amazing.
That was wild.
So working with him was I guess I never really felt like there was any worry for him competing against me, because not only is he Clive Barker, but he created.
Yeah, it's his franchise. That's crappy for everyone in a way.
It was. And so it kind of was a cloud hanging over my head while I wrote it. I figured this isn't going to go anywhere, because the great Clive Barker is going to write something that's going to be stunning, and that'll be the end of that. But they, these kind of what they call them sweepstakes are more and more common in Hollywood when you have a high-profile project and the studio will hire multiple people to work on it at the same time. I had the same situation with the Grudge sequel. I was working on it, and in that case, I was also the interloper, because while I was working on it, Steven Susko, who wrote the original Grudge, was working on a draft as well.
Oh God.
So I'd already been in that situation
It was
once.
such a big success. Why wouldn't they just hand it over to him?
I don't know. I don't really know what happened in that situation. But in the end, they made his movie. So it was weird. I don't understand quite why they went to another writer.
Can I ask like a technical question? When they do that, are you still getting paid either way?
Yeah.
Okay.
You're not writing it until you close the deal, basically. So yeah, they're paying multiple writers at the same time.
That's frightening.
Different rates, they're paying you based on what your own personal rate is.
That's not how you nurture an artist. Hollywood.
It's Hollywood. Yeah.
Oh
There's no nurturing in Hollywood.
Well, we gotta start. We gotta put women in charge. Enough of this.
Yes, absolutely. But that is, by the way, that's not true. That's mostly true of writers. It's not as true of directors.
Okay.
Writers are considered the most replaceable artist in Hollywood. And I think a lot of it has to do with the fact that many executives and many producers are either frustrated writers or feel that they can write. And so they have a kind of less respect for the writer, because they feel like anyone can write. But as having directed and written now, I would have to say that writing is much harder than directing.
I would agree. It's much more mysterious, right? It's intangible.
Yeah, and so did you write your project as well?
I did, yes.
So you know that once you get to the directing stage, you have a writer's vision to work with.
Oh yeah.
And even when it's your own, but when you're,
which can be bad, you can be too precious. But yes,
sure,
at least
absolutely.
You know your own roadmap.
But at least what you're doing is you're creating. You're not creating from nothing. You're creating from something that's already existing.
I agree.
Yeah, so there's a ton of there's just not much respect.
I can't believe they were pitting you against Clive Barker. I was researching this, and I noticed that the article that I was reading said that you and Clive Barker were sort of working together on the reboot. I didn't realize that this is actually how it worked out.
Not at all.
Which would have been amazing, I'm guessing.
Oh, for me, yeah. For him, not so much, but
I'm sure he would have liked it. Why not?
Ending to this story is that while the executives at least told me that they really liked my draft, mine didn't get made, and Clive's didn't get made either, which for me was really sad, because I would have much rather been beaten out by Clive than beaten out by nothing. Which is in the end what happened.
Actually, I don't know if I agree with that, to be honest. Do you know what happened? Why they didn't end up making a film? When it comes down to it, the head of the studio has to really connect with the material. And I just don't think Bob loved the scripts that he got along the way, whether they were mine or other people's. He has to finance it. It's crazy because they remade every single property. I mean, we're going to talk about Let's Scare Jessica to Death, but they went through everything except for Hellraiser until now, maybe.
Yeah, well, they try to remake everything, and a lot of them get stuck in development hell. There's your plug. Which is by 1 year for Hollywood, I was development hell. I came as a devil with my own scripts on the end of a pitchfork.
That's hilarious.
Really the name of your podcast.
Oh, I love that, and I am authentically obsessed with these lost movies. I don't know why. There's just something about this graveyard of horror movies that didn't get made that I'm fascinated
also a
by.
Nice turn of phrase.
Yeah, and it's true.
That's what amazes me, is how many bad horror movies have been made.
Yeah,
when there are probably a lot of really good scripts that haven't been made.
It's frightening as an emerging filmmaker to think of it on those levels. How and why films actually get made, and it has little to do with.
The good news is, as a writer, since you wrote your project as well, that you do get paid as a writer even when your project doesn't get made. I mean, you only get paid half of what you would, or less than half, if it got made. But being a writer in Hollywood is a little bit like being on a baseball team, but not being in the starting nine. So you get paid well. It's not as good as it used to be, but you can't complain about the pay. You can complain about the security because you just never know where your next job is coming from. But like a baseball team, you may not make it to the show. You may be sitting on the bench a lot of time. You're doing hard work. You're practicing every day. In this case, practicing is you're actually writing, and it's not practicing, but you're actually getting paid for it. But you're getting paid to show up every day. You're getting paid to do your work, but you don't actually get to, be on the field during the game and be on national television. And so a lot of writers make a decent living for a certain amount of time, not getting things made. Eventually you have to. And while some of these movies haven't gotten made, I know I was on a TV show and I've had a bunch of episodes made. And I've also been the cleanup writer on a couple of projects that have been made. So I didn't get credit, but I was the one who brought it, the last mile to the screen. But so it's not awful when a project doesn't get made. It's sad, but it's just part of the business. Don't worry that these projects don't get made, because selling it is much harder than getting it made. So if you can sell it, then you have good enough ideas and good enough writing to entice people, then you're halfway there.
We did this short with the intention, like you, of making a feature, and we went on this like world tour of festivals trying to get a deal to get a feature made. And it wasn't until the very, very, very last festival in Mexico that something actually happened. So you just never know.
Oh, that's great. So where is that project?
I don't know if I'm allowed to say.
Okay.
But
I'll have to keep following your social media to find it.
Yes, please do. We just handed in our third draft.
Awesome.
Yeah, we just the other day, which is it's nice, but it's a little sad because the power is completely out of your hands now. Now you have to wait.
No, it's very true, and there's a couple of routes to go, and I know that's one of them. The other route is, if you have representation in Hollywood, is to get the short into the hands of producers and buyers who might be interested before or while you're doing the festival circuit. I don't know for sure if this is the right story, but one of my favorite horror shorts in a long time is Baghead. And Baghead made the festival circuit, won a ton of awards at horror festivals. And only at the very end, like yours, did they also get finally get a feature deal.
Oh, it's chilling. It's
but
chilling.
Others won't even take the festival. There's a short that just sold at South by Southwest, a horror short by Julian Terry, who has sold 3 now shorts, and he has never gone the festival route for that. He's always had his agents sell them directly to interested producers and studios.
Yeah, I mean, that sounds like the dream, but we were just young and emerging, and we had no contacts.
Yeah,
but
of course.
Now we do.
Yeah, and probably the next time out, you may go directly to studios, but then you don't get to do the festival circuit, which is so much fun. So that's why
it was the most fun I've ever had. It was the most fun in my life. I cannot wait to do it again. We were going to go. Did you guys apply to Chattanooga?
Yes, I can't wait to find out because I really want to get in.
I hope you get in. It was the biggest heartbreak of my life is that we got in, and that was like the first big had to go online because of COVID.
Yeah. I'm worried that some of these are going to be, even if they're open, they're going to be like half.
Well, that's Panic Fest. It does seem like it is happening.
Yeah, it is, but it's a hybrid. So cool. I think they are keeping it somewhat limited in terms of in person, but they are having in person events.
Yeah, I mean, Kansas City's the rules are probably not exactly the safest of all the cities. So,
and Chattanooga probably won't be either.
No, like in Tennessee, probably. I mean, I bet you Tennessee is open for business. But,
yeah, I'm sure it is.
Yeah. Have you? I don't know. I'm asking this, but have you had your vaccine yet?
Saturday. I get my shot this coming Saturday.
Shut up! I get mine on Monday.
Congratulations!
Congrats to you too. And your family, are they also?
My wife got vaccinated today. Actually.
Oh my God!
We split it up so that if one of us got really sick, or we would be able to take care of each other.
That's a frightening thing to have to decide.
Yeah, well, in California, we didn't think we were going to have the opportunity until June because we're not 65 or older.
Yes, me neither.
But they finally opened it up to everybody this month.
Oh, they did.
So we got lucky.
Wow. I'm lucky because I have asthma.
Now you're in Canada?
I am. I'm in Toronto.
I hear my aunt is in Toronto, and she just got her shot. I heard for a while there were like no one knew what the plans were.
It's not good. It's really, you'd think that we'd be better than we're
For
doing
sure.
right now, but
Yeah.
it's probably it's probably a handful of coordination issues. I'm glad I'm not in charge.
Yeah, no, that's not easy, I'm sure.
Did you have a title? Did you have like a subtitle in mind for your Hellraiser film?
No, it was just, I mean, I usually leave that to like the marketing people.
Oh, really?
So this
Oh,
was just Hellraiser. And it had nothing to do story wise with the first one at
smart.
all.
Very
Nothing.
good idea. That's the way to go, I think.
It just didn't like the people in the first one. So
Yeah, and if you're not extremely passionate about it, like we're gonna know. We're gonna smell that on you.
yeah, and look, I have to admit that mine was kind of mainstream in its storytelling, and even I really appreciate movies that have a device. I
Hmm.
mean, it's not necessary, but for me, it's a great way in. I mean, The Ring is like one of the great devices in a horror movie of all time. So mine had a device to get us into the story. The one area where I wanted to push boundaries was in the actual visions of the horror and how I'm not like the biggest gore fan in the world, but
Same.
I think the well placed gore, well placed shocking bit of gore is almost required for a horror movie and is incredibly powerful. So I tried to keep it light, not have a lot of it, but when I had it, I wanted it to be really
Striking,
horrific.
yeah.
Yeah. Um,
Because it's only effective if you're using it sparingly, because then otherwise you get bored by it.
Yeah, and the other thing is, and you may not connect to this as much because of the religious horror thing, but I think that one of the things that is most horrific in religious horror films is, and is most easy for audiences to, to call up their deepest, most existential fears, is the idea of hell, and the idea of eternal damnation. And even if you don't believe in it, the idea that there might be something like that is
Nightmare.
just terrifying. I mean, I can't really think of much more terrifying than death isn't the end.
You
If
don't. Yes, yes.
it's worse after death, how horrible. So so we wanted to play with that too, and I felt like that is something that at least the first Hellraiser film didn't get into a lot, except of course, your main character is obviously dead, or one of the main characters is dead and trying to, in a sense, come back. But
Hmm.
you don't really get the sense of hell a lot, except for my favorite sequence in the movie, where I can't remember the character's name anymore, but where the daughter is in the hospital and she that the wall opens up and she ends up in that kind of other world,
Uh-huh.
which may be hell, may not be hell. But that's so I wanted to spend a little bit more time really talking about the concept of hell and thinking about that and that being part of the movie. I think I was thinking as much Hellraiser, I was thinking Jacob's Ladder.
I don't know how I feel personally about the ending, but I will tell you that I'm always too scared to revisit it. So that's got to say something about it.
Yeah, I mean, people have very mixed feelings about it.
Yes, it's
For me,
polarizing.
yeah, it really works for me because I'm not. I love that bit of hope at the end of a horror movie,
Hmm.
which is why when I saw Seven originally, I was so pissed off.
Ugh.
And now I've come to believe that that's the very best ending, and it's brilliant. But when I saw it the first time, that nihilistic ending pissed me off so much I didn't want to have anything to do.
Yeah, I saw that way too young. No, I love that you talked about the concept of eternity, because even though I'm not religious at all, it is probably what scares me the most. Once I die, just let me rest. Let
Right?
that be it, please. If you're willing, would you be able to give us like a little bit more of like a plot
Yeah, sure.
outline of what your story was?
Yeah, not unlike a device like the Ring. Um, the my version had a device that is viral in a sense, a horror that is passed on from one owner to the next, and the box just seemed like a perfect device. I mean, it's already a device,
Hmm.
so
Literally.
instead of the box simply being a portal, which I guess is kind of a way to look at it, in the original Hellraiser. I made the box a deal with the devil in a sense. So the basic idea of it was that the box can give you something you desperately want. Once you make that deal, and it's not like you make a deal like you visibly know you talk the deal out, or you voice what you want or anything like that. It's just that the box knows. And once you accept that, the box takes a tiny slice of you, if while it's in your hands, and your blood drips into the box as in the original, and the countdown essentially begins. The deal begins, and there are 6 sides to the box, and there are 6 things that you love dearly in your life that you will start to lose one by one.
Okay, cool.
Until the very last thing, which is the thing you find most precious. And you have to solve the puzzle, because it's a puzzle box. Before, and it's not just like a literal, like a Rubik's Cube where you have to figure out how to solve it physically, but you have to figure out what's going on and solve it in some way if you to stop the carnage from happening. And most people who have played with the box realize as they start losing these things in their lives. This is backstory. Most people have realized that they're going to lose the thing most dear to them soon. Their children, their family, something, and most of them have committed suicide before they got to the end, in hopes that that's the solution. That stops the box from taking the thing they love the most. And our hero is estranged from her family. She had a really difficult childhood. Her older brothers escaped the abuse of the family, and she was left behind. And her older brother dies, and she finds out he committed suicide, which makes very little sense to her because of who he is and was. And she takes the box, and unbeknownst to her, she starts the ball rolling once again with herself. And she's adopted her niece, who she barely knows, who's the daughter of the brother who died. And that girl she eventually realizes that girl was the last side of the puzzle box, that, she was going to die. And that's why her brother committed suicide. And it's going to be her last piece too, because she falls in love with this child over the course of the story. Okay. But meanwhile, so that's the device. But meanwhile, we're trying to figure out who Pinhead is. And he shows up throughout the movie. And unlike in the original, you actually get to know him a little bit. She talks to him. He plays a strong role in this. And he's kind of behind all of this. And takes some delight in the torture that these people go through. But she discovers over the course of the story who he is, what his story is, and what the story of the box is. And just as a little bit of mythology to tell you about the box, there are a couple biblical stories that are woven into this. And some people consider King Solomon, the first king of the second king of Israel, as the first exorcist, because there's this book called The Lesser Key of Solomon, and it talks about the demons that Solomon trapped, and he trapped them in this vessel that's known as Solomon's vessel, but is occasionally known in translations as Solomon's box.
Okay.
So the idea is that this is the original Solomon's box, the original tool that was used to trap demons. And it's
okay, cool. And in relation to Pandora, or no?
In a way, yeah.
Okay.
And there may be some connection to the fact that, I wouldn't be surprised at all if those myths are, through
who knows,
legend and verbal were somehow connected. So that's the little bit of the backstory. The other reveal of the movie is something I'm not sure I'm gonna reveal now, because I still want to use it someday.
All right, that's fair. Sad but fair.
But that's who actually Pinhead is.
Cool. Well, now I'm.
We can talk about it offline.
All right, that's a deal. It kind of is. I don't know. Obviously, I'm just hearing what you're saying, but it's giving me kind of Drag Me to Hell vibes, where the pace is just instilled from the get go.
Yeah, I mean, and I love Drag Me to Hell, and Sam Raimi's a god as well. I think the tone was much more serious than Drag Me to Hell, because very few people can pull off that tone.
No one but him.
But yeah, there's a little bit of that. you're doomed from the start.
Yeah, race against the clock.
Yeah, absolutely. And then again, that's a ticking clock device which works so well in so
Like
many
The Ring,
movies
of course.
before. Yeah.
Cool. Well, I'm tense and stressed just thinking about it. So that's excellent.
That's my version that will never see the light of day.
Well, that's sad. I would love to see it, but I'm also very grateful that I've managed to get you on here, and we're getting everyone the next best thing, which is sort of your retelling of it.
Well, maybe the TV show will be the next best thing.
Yeah, well, the TV show, if it happens, it looks like it really is. They've got what's his face on board.
Is it David Goyer?
No, David Gordon Green.
Oh, yeah, that's right.
I think Goyer was involved at one point too.
He's involved with so many horror projects in Hollywood.
Yeah, I know. I know.
Yeah, no, I think you're right. I think that they're well along the way. I mean, TV is one way, and streaming has been a great way to kind of rescue a lot of these amazing franchises.
Yes, that are too difficult to do in an hour and a half. Did you see The Dark Tower? I'm don't want to shit on anything, but
I have not.
Yeah, it's just not an hour and a half,
And that's the problem is that it's so easy to make a bad. I'm not talking about Dark Tower because I haven't seen it, and I'm not going to badmouth anything. But it's so easy to make a bad horror movie, and so hard to make a good one. But when you have great writers in television who have the freedom to take the story and spread it out over a long, a nice long period of time, get to know the characters, it's just I just think your odds of making something good are much higher.
Yes, I agree. I really
Speaking
hope.
of which, I'm just it's my campaign right now to make everyone who is not aware of it aware of a really cool horror TV show on Netflix from Korea called Sweet Home. And if you haven't seen it, you should go watch it. It's so much fun.
Can you give us a log line?
Well, yeah, but it doesn't sound very original because it sounds like so much stuff that we've seen recently.
The title, I'm scared already.
In some ways, it's very much a zombie kind of story, but it's about there's a fun twist on it. But it's about a kind of I wouldn't say a slum, but a apartment building in Korea that is not where the denizens are not very successful or wealthy, and an emergency happens and we don't really know what it is, but people start turning into monsters in the outside world, and even potentially in the building. And the problem is it might be viral, but we don't know how. So anyone can turn at any moment. And it's just, the monsters are fun. The effects are not amazing. But after a couple episodes, you just start to love these characters so much, and the action is fantastic, and the horror is fun, and I know there's a second season already planned, so you should go check it out. It's really,
I promise I will.
By the way, based on a web comic or a webisodes that's apparently becoming really huge in Korea as well.
Cool. Well, any way to tell a story, I'm here for it.
Yeah, absolutely.
Especially a scary story.
Yeah,
that's all that really interests me.
Yeah.
Listen, I feel like I've taken up enough of your time.
Oh, sure. It was so much fun. And like I said, I don't usually get to talk about this stuff. So it was fun. But also, I always love a good conversation with a fellow horror nerd.
Me too. Literally anytime. If someone's a horror person, I'm like, oh, okay. Well, that's the person I'm sticking with tonight.
Right. And that's why these festivals, like we did, our last short was a comedy. And, comedy people, I've worked with them all my life. They're fine, but horror people are special.
They're way better. I'm surrounded by comedy people too. They're pretentious and get them out of here. No way.
They're also generally a pretty unhappy group.
They are wrecked.
Our comedy writers are writing from places of pain.
Yeah. These people are not coping, and they are on drugs.
And horror writers are getting it all out on the page.
Oh yeah.
We're
like sober, and we're just like, we have our DVD collection, and we're fine.
Right. Yeah. So I love horror fans.
Yeah. Well, thank you again. Maybe we will talk again one day. Who knows?
Well, and I'm also is there a way to see your short? I know
I'm going to send it to you. I'm thrilled that you asked.
Oh yeah, I'm dying to see it. We'll have a screening at the Tenenbaum Park household tonight.
Oh my God, yes! I love that. Well, have an amazing night, and thank you again, Teddy.
Oh, thanks for having me. I can't wait to hear the episode and all of your other episodes as well.
We'll talk to you soon, Teddy.
All right, it's good talking to you, Josh. Take care.
Bye for now.
All right, bye-bye.
You can also follow us online on basically any social media platform at Devil Hell Pod. That's DEVEL Hell Pod. And you should like and comment and just engage with us because we are bored. So that's it for this week. Thank you for tuning in. Don't forget to subscribe, rate, and write a review because it really helps us get seen in this vast, endless hell of horror movie podcasts. See ya.